Right, good morning, everyone. Um, on today's webinar, you have myself, Mark Shirley from App Technology, and we also have Ben Cook on the line from Management Studio. Today's session, what we're going to be doing is talking about some IT transformation challenges, whether the objective is moving from Citrix to AVD, AD to Entra, SCCM to Intune. What we find is there are a number of underlying challenges that are remarkably similar and that can be looked at and addressed with Management Studio. What we often find is one of the big ones is organizations lack a complete view of their estate. So there's years of accumulated technical debt, information spread out across multiple tools, lots of spreadsheets, and that can lead to manual processes, increased project risk, poor experiences, and that can be for both the IT teams that are running the projects, but also to end users. So what we're going to do on today's webinar is we're going to look through a few examples of where we've used Management Studio to address some of those common problems, providing a single source of truth, automating repetitive tasks, and giving organizations confidence to deliver complex transformations at scale. Taking forwards. So one of the ways we solve this, and I have this slide across all of the ones I've been doing in this series, is pulling lots of data from different tools like SCCM, Intune if you've got it, Active Directory, and pulling it together. So you take the data, information, and pull it together to create some structured knowledge. And that's what we tend to use to drive these projects forward. So taking messy, disconnected data and providing a single pane of glass for managing the projects. So Citrix to AVD. So this is one of my favorite examples that we're going through. And this is where we were engaged. Our Management Studio was used by a large bank to support a migration of roughly 20,000 Citrix desktops, migrating to Microsoft Azure Virtual Desktop. One of the big wins we had was early on by implementing Management Studio and analyzing actual usage. We identified roughly 6,000 of those desktops were actually no longer actively using Citrix. And this reduction meant that less users needed migrations. There was a significant cost benefit in terms of licensing that was realized really early on, and a huge chunk of project migration effort was able to be removed right at the outset. Automation capabilities also had a major impact. So using Management Studio to automate user communications, application readiness tracking, and also to do things like Active Directory updates and AVD provisioning. This enabled the migration team to complete the project around 9 months quicker than they had originally projected when they were looking to do this via traditional deployment methodologies. From an operational perspective, Management Studio was able to replace spreadsheets and manual analysis with a single real-time view, which improved visibility and reduced the manual administration tasks. And that, alongside the 9 months reduction in time, allowed the team to reduce the size of the team by roughly 3 FTEs, which again had an ongoing monthly, roughly £15,000 benefit. So lots of benefits there. And overall, at the end of it, what we found was we simplified the migration and delivered benefits like license optimizations, automation, real-time reporting, and a structured migration process. So there was a faster, low risk transition moving from Citrix to AVD and a better end user experience. Skip one too far forward. So another one of the examples when we're looking at AD to Entra, it was also another bank. And this was an organization which had 2 legacy Active Directory domains that had been lingering around for roughly 20 years. The domains had roughly 15,000 users, along with thousands of groups and permissions. The biggest challenge that we had there wasn't actually migrating from AD to Entra, but it was understanding what was in those domains. So again, with Management Studio, we were able to pull in the Active Directory data from both of these domains into a single continually refreshed data set. And then with that visibility, it was possible for us to identify where there were redundant accounts, obsolete groups, and it allowed the organization to cleanse and rationalize that environment ahead of migration. And therefore, we only migrated forward what was actually needed rather than carrying forward 20 years of technical debt into a new shiny Entra environment. And because of that, and we were also able to automate much of the process. So again, providing real-time reporting, structured workflows, and automation with some of the migration steps, resulting in a significantly more controlled and low-risk migration, better governance, improved visibility, and a significantly reduced operational overhead. And then Intune, or SCCM to Intune. So this example comes from some work that was done at Brunel University, who were migrating from roughly 6,000 devices as part of a modern workplace transformation. So on the SCCM side, what we're able to do was gain complete visibility of the estate. We were able to consolidate the information that was in SCCM and Active Directory and other data sources, build a single view of users, devices, and applications to understand exactly what was there and what really needed to be migrated. Then by using that data, we were able to plan intelligently, prioritize which applications were needed, and then put them into logical migration waves, ensuring that the right people receive the right applications at the right time. And then once again, we were able to automate much of that process. So user communications, deployment scheduling, progress tracking, and reporting were all handled through the Management Studio platform, giving complete visibility throughout the migration. The end result was a faster, lower risk transition from SCCM to Intune, significantly less manual effort, better governance, and a much smoother experience. So just to recap across all of these, and before I hand over to Ben to do the demonstration, really what I'm trying to pull out here is that Management Studio as a platform isn't tied to a single technology. It's a platform that is capable of delivering and supporting complex transformations. So when we were looking at Citrix to AVD, our focus was on how we were able to reduce the costs, accelerate delivery by identifying unnecessary migration candidates, and then automating that deployment process. When we were looking at the AD to Entra, we were able to deliver value by understanding the environment and helping to present and cleanse years of legacy data, therefore simplifying the migration ahead of any changes that were being made. And then when we looked at the SCCM to Intune migration, we were able to, again, provide visibility and then able to orchestrate the discovery, migration, and deployment steps, and then manage that program through a single platform. So whilst the technologies are different, the outcomes are the same. Better visibility, greater automation, low risk, and faster delivery. So that's a lot of talking from me. What I'll now do is I will hand over to Ben, and Ben can then show you how this works in practice with the toolset.
Thanks, Mark. So let me just share my screen, and hopefully you'll all be able to see that okay. Good stuff. So my name is Ben Cook. I'm a senior product specialist working at Management Studio. I've been with the organisation about 11 years now, a little over 11 years. And I've got some good experience of working on migration projects. And today I want to talk to you a bit about the technology involved in Management Studio and helping deliver those projects that Mark was just talking to you about, and how we can reduce risk and accelerate those projects and just help things move much more quickly, much more reliably, ultimately with a lower cost. So I've got a few slides to run through, and I'm going to jump in and out of Management Studio as well. Let's talk a little bit about the overview first of all. So I'm going to talk about 4 key areas. They are discovering the estate, discovering the users, the apps, and other pieces that we need to consider as part of the project, the consolidation of data, optimizing the effort going forward, and then looking at how we actually do those deployments. First things first then is discovery. It's absolutely critical that we get a full understanding of what's out there today. We have connectors that bring that data in, provide daily feeds. The nice thing about our approach is that we don't require an agent to go out there, whether we're just discovering maybe users and devices in on-prem Active Directory, or whether we're doing a deeper scrape and getting information about, say, applications or HR data, we still don't need that agent, and those connectors are really going to help us out there. Ultimately, what we can do is pull all of those systems into a single instance of Management Studio to give you that probably over-mentioned single pane of glass view, but it is absolutely brilliant for managing and delivering projects. You really do need everything to be in one place. Hopefully avoiding spreadsheet hell. I've tried it myself. I've seen other people try it. Managing these types of projects in spreadsheets doesn't work well. Ends up becoming very difficult, very slow, and doesn't have all the benefits of automation as well. Now, with Management Studio, we've got quite a few options for connectors. We've got the kind of legacy on-prem connectors for things like Active Directory and SCCM or MECM, but we can also bring in data from flat file structures. So quite often we are given data in a CSV or Excel format or even a text file. That can all be brought in, and it's not just manually importing data, we can do that automatically. Cloud connectors we've got, so things like Entra and Intune, and quite often we need to plug gaps with user surveys, with user information, or quite often the project team have already been out and spoken to people and collected a lot of data. So bringing that data in either via survey or via Excel again is very easily achievable and something we do on most projects, I would say. We've got all that data in a single place now, and the next piece is about consolidation. So it's about sorting through that data. Quite often applications are involved in these projects, and almost always the naming standards are, well, vendors tend not to have consistent naming standards. So even if you look at one vendor's set of applications, they will vary significantly. We'll look at that in just a moment. So we've got a piece of technology called ACE AI, which is the Asset Confidence Engine. This provides auto normalization of those names, so basically making them consistent. It also works on the vendor, the version, the whole thing. We really do need to do that right early on in the process to be able to understand true scope. ACE AI also provides application categories and descriptions, and that's using AI. A really useful enhancement, again, just to speed up the understanding of exactly what's out there. And as well as all of that, we are going to be bringing in all of the user information, the device information. We can bring in hardware information. Obviously, it depends on the project you're having to deliver, but ultimately, we're going to be able to understand your infrastructure. In terms of consolidating, so again, ACE AI helps with the applications, so it can suggest which applications to keep and which ones to reject, and that's based on other customer decisions. So we harvest anonymously what other customers decide to do with applications, and then we present that back to the end user who's using Management Studio, looking at those applications with a confidence rating. And it's based on a percentage. So if 86% of our customers have said this is a legitimate app that they're keeping, we present that 86% confidence rating for that app when people are looking at those apps and trying to make those decisions. And the same for applications that are out of scope. We have those confidence ratings. Now, I've worked on application projects, migration projects, domain projects. I know that one of the slowest pieces is sorting applications. It doesn't just involve the apps team, it involves procurement, licensing, and so on, quite often application owners. Now, with ACE AI and the user surveys and some plugins that we've got, such as the app owner survey, it makes managing and maintaining this application data much faster. And what we ideally want to do is get to a place where you can start delivering that project early on. And this is what we're able to do with ACE AI. I think what I'll do now is just jump into the demo for a minute and talk about or show you actually how we do a couple of those pieces. So this is Management Studio we've got here. A quick introduction to the user interface. So we've got the dashboards up at the top here, and these blue buttons here take me into the main modules. So for example, if I come into the All User Migrations area, I can see a list of my users here, including me at the top, and we have process workflow. So for all these blue modules, these main modules, we can see the process workflow that those objects will be going through. So apps will be going through things like testing. If I open up a user record, I can see information such as the applications that I've been using, the devices I've been using, and so on. So that's just a quick overview of how the data works. But I wanted to show you the applications and how the normalization and rationalization works with ACE. So we come into applications. Now we have a few different statuses that you can see up at the top here. Now, applications that have been nominated as in scope are marked as accepted. Now, when they come into the system, they generally come into pending. It's almost like a triage area. So let me just show you the pending applications. And this is where you typically start with your review. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a look at the Adobe applications to begin with. And what you'll see is in the vendor name, there's quite a few variations on that spelling or the words in there. So I want to clean that up automatically. Now I can do this through the menu options here. I can come in and come into the ACE normalization, and great, that was working earlier. Okay, so I can't do my normalization because my sync has just gone out of date, but I can do my rationalization. So let me come in here. In fact, I'm going to have to kick that off. That's embarrassing. So let me kick that off now, and then we will come back in there in a moment. Okay, so this is the ACE AI settings. I'm going to sync that with my server now, and then we'll come back in there. Great, so that was the application normalization, the normalization of those names and versions and vendors, and also we'll look at the rationalization in just a moment. Next up is the optimization piece. So when we're looking at optimization, we're looking at things like projection reports. This is about understanding where we should invest our effort and how we can apply that effort to get the best way forward. So the most people being ready for migration early on in the project, and I'll show you that in just a moment. And we've also got the ability for users to accelerate that readiness through app review. And we've also got real-time readiness reports. So the projection report is more about we're right at the start, what should we do first? The real-time readiness is about we're part way through, how ready are we? Is anybody ready today? So we'll take a look at those two. We've got the ability to send out user communications, so very nicely formatted HTML emails. In fact, I've got one open here. So we can send these out on triggers. It might be a time trigger. One of our customers at the moment has decided that when a user's apps become ready, when the apps team have made progress and moved some apps into live, the final state, and all of those apps are ready for a user, they send them an email at that point. So that's triggered on readiness. So quite a few options around the emails, and we can do things like self-scheduling. So when a user is ready, send them an email and invite them to maybe book their slot for when they would like to be migrated. Okay, so I'm going to jump in and show you a couple of those things. Let me just see if I can do my normalization and rationalization now. Here we go, that looks a bit better. That must have just gone out of sync. So first thing is the cleaning of the names, making names consistent. And this is the yellow suggestions here. It's saying all of these ones in the left-hand column should be changed to the right-hand column. And I can apply those very easily just by selecting them, quick approving, and then we've got a button down at the bottom here for apply approvals. And that's going to go through and update all of those. But that would normally be done as an automated task in the background. And then next up, we would do the rationalization. So this is the top option. And what I'm going to do here is, I think what I'll do is just filter on maybe my reader apps just to keep things clean. So I've got Acrobat Reader and Adobe Reader here. Now what it's doing, you can see it's suggesting that all of these are rationalized to this bottom one. So these are the older versions, version 18, 19, 20, and so on. And it's found the highest version is this one. And it's suggesting that that's got a 95% confidence rating. So we're very confident that that should be done because almost every other customer has done exactly that. So if I want to rationalize all of these to that, then I just select them all again. In fact, I'll do all of these in the screen at the moment. Quick approve, and then apply those approvals. Now, there's something else that I haven't mentioned in here is that we understand who has each of those previous versions. And when we do this rationalization, what it does is it takes those people and it forward paths them to the latest version. And you can see that number here. So if somebody had used Adobe Reader 10.1, this version I've got selected, because I've rationalized that to a later version, those 10 people are forward pathed to my latest version of Adobe Reader. And what I can do is I can now come back into my accepted apps. And now what I'll see is I've got my 2 readers here, and they have lots and lots of people linked to them because of that rationalization process. So I've opened up that application here. You'll see all of the apps that I've rationalized them from are here, and then all of those users who use those apps collectively are now listed in this panel here. Okay, so that's the kind of the normalization, rationalization piece. The other thing I wanted to show you was the projection report. Now, this is a report that we target at users, because what we're saying is we want to get a certain set of users ready as early on in the process. I've also got my user workflow in here, by the way, similar to the apps workflow. But what I'm going to do is, rather than focus on 5,000 people being ready early on, I'm just going to focus on a subset of those people. So I'm going to look at people in EMEA, just because it takes the numbers down and it's a little bit faster for the demo. And I'm going to run that projection report. So I open up my projection report, and let's see, I just need to move that window. I'm going to look ahead by 8 weeks. And this is, like I said, it's a forecast. It's a finger in the air. If we could do 25 apps per week, which would be the best apps to do so that I can get the most people in EMEA ready. So this is our output. The green line shows us how many people are ready each week. The blocks are weekly efforts, if you like, almost like sprints. The first one is today. So that's where we are today, 12th of August, 1 person could be migrated today. If we go forward a week, if we were to get 25 of the best apps ready, the most used apps ready by EMEA, we're up to 25 people. 2 weeks, 50 apps, 206 people. And by 3 weeks, and I can click on it here, the green and the amber lines are crossing over. Amber is outstanding users. So this is about the halfway mark. We've got about half of our users ready with 3 weeks worth of effort. And of course, I need to know which are the best apps to focus on. So if I come back to week 1, come into my application list, and I just want my point in time applications, we'll see that we've got 25 apps in here. And these are the ones I should focus on in week 1. If I were to get those ready, these are my users who will be ready down here. So these are my 25 users, my 206 users, my 412 users, and so on. So not only do we get an idea of which apps we should focus on, but we also get an idea of who would be ready if those apps were done. Really, really powerful. The next report is, in fact, let me show you how we've got the user app review. That was something else I wanted to show you. So as part of the user survey, so this would probably be sent out during the time when the applications are being prepared. This is the survey here. It's sent out via an email with a link. And in here, they've got lots of options in terms of checking their contact details, the location, office they're located in, department, and so on. Things like, do they need a remote migration? And one of the things they can do is look at the apps that we believe we need to give them. And they've got the option of unticking any of those keep checkboxes to say, I actually don't use this app anymore. And we've got a customer doing this at the moment, and they're doing it very early on in the process, so that users can say, well, I've not used this app for years, I don't need it. And that will accelerate that individual user's readiness without the apps team having to do anything. Very powerful. The next piece is the real-time readiness. So we're effectively saying we're slightly further on in the project. Let's see how ready we are. And we can do that with a readiness report. I can do it in a summary and detail. And what that means is I actually get 2 reports in one. So I'm going to run my readiness report in the top half here. It's a RAG report. And then in the bottom, I just want to see the applications for that particular user. So I think there was 1 person ready. When we looked at the projection report, there was 1 person ready today. It looks like this is our person here. So they only need 2 applications. But if we were to look at Sean Banks at the top here, we can see he's got 12 apps he needs, 3 of them are ready, 9 outstanding, and we can see that application list down at the bottom here. Obviously, we can do things like sort by readiness, so we can see our ready user there. And off the back of the readiness, we can trigger certain actions. Like I said earlier, we might want to send somebody an email to say, you're good to choose your slot for booking your migration. So that's a bit on readiness. Oh, the self-scheduling. Let's take a quick look at that too. So again, this is an email that will be sent out with a link in it. And the link takes the users to another portal page where they can see which slots are available and they can pick their slot in there. We can also build up the top here. You can see we've got these menus. So we can build menus so that we can build an entire end user portal so that they can get insights into other bits of data which might be useful. We'll come back to that in a moment. So that's the optimization. Let's talk about actual deployments now, because we've been doing lots of preparation for deploying. One of the key things we do is automation in terms of that might be triggering something to happen in other systems. It might be triggering actions within Intune. It might be adding people to groups. So Mark's talked about an AD to Entra migration. And one of the things we needed to do was add people to groups at a certain point in time. And the automation allows you to do that. It could also do things like OS deployments, application deployments, or sending emails, that kind of thing. We've also got the engineers portal. So for some project types, your engineers might have some actions to do as part of that migration. It might be that the user needs to come in and return a laptop or something along those lines. And we can build our engineers portals very easily. And it might be very simple, such as this. So showing me who is due to be migrated over the next couple of days, showing me who has been recently migrated. And when Beverly turns up at 9 AM, the engineer will click on the review button, and that would take them into a page where they can undertake what actions they need to take. Maybe there's a new laptop being handed out. Maybe they need to do something about the legacy device handover. In terms of deployment, something else customers are very keen to do is reassign devices. Quite often people end up with multiple devices. And one of the big things we can do is look at the audit history so that we can understand which devices are no longer required by somebody. And that might again be part of the engineer's the engineer's portal, such as a device handover, like we can see at the bottom here. Other things we can do are nice dashboards. So we've got web-based dashboards, such as, I think I've got one here somewhere. Here we go, the global portal. So we've got a dashboard here, which is simply showing how much progress we've made, how many devices have been migrated. It could easily be how many users have been migrated. So that's it in terms of the demo. Just as a summary, we started out talking about discovery. It's absolutely imperative that we have a good understanding of scope so that we can begin to plan for that project. In terms of optimization, we've got things like the projection reporting, we've got user engagement, we've got readiness reports, we've got self-scheduling, lots of options around there, again, to accelerate that readiness and to move things forward more quickly. And the automation is absolutely key in these types of projects. It means we can migrate faster, ultimately reducing risk by removing human error and reducing the overall cost of the program. Okay, that's it from me. Mark, I'm going to pass back to you.
Thank you, Ben. Let me pull my screen back up. All right, thanks, Ben. And thank you, everyone, for your time today on the webinar. I hope you found this useful. Obviously, we've only really been able to touch on some very high level benefits across the transformations we were discussing. Ben's touched on some of the technical capabilities. If this sounds like it would be useful or a benefit for future activities, please get in touch with myself or Ben, and we can walk you through this in a lot more detail and discuss any activities that you've got coming up. Also, if you found this useful and are interested, one of the other things we can do is do a high-level assessment of your current estate for free that will just kind of give you some of these insights, and again, might be helpful if you're looking to plan ahead. Once we're done today, what I'll be looking to do is send out a summary and a recording of today's session. But as I said, once again, please reach out to myself or Ben if you do have any questions. The final thing I'll mention is we do have the final in this series of webinars that we've been doing, which is specifically focused on infrastructure consolidation. And that's coming up in just under a month now on September the 9th. So if that's of interest, there'll be some emails coming out soon, but obviously, again, reach out and we can get yourselves added to that. But otherwise, I would just like to thank everyone again for your time today, and I will close the webinar off. Thank you all.